Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Today we're going to use this as a generic on how to deal with a frozen reel. In this case, this is one that's been sitting around a while. It's a Daiwa 7350 RL. It doesn't move. There's no turning to it whatsoever. There's a little bit of play in the handle, that's about it. And even the bail is sluggish. So something's happened to this reel over time. It was probably used and set aside somewhere, and then everything's just dried up or whatever. So we'll show you a couple of the steps that you need to take if you want to try and unlock this reel and restore. So first thing we're going to try and do is get as many of the exterior parts off as we can. That would start with the spool. We'll take the tension knob off, and we'll see if we have the ability to pull off. We can get that off. That's a good sign. Now there's a lot of grease in here, but most of the grease appears to be dried, and taking the spool off gives us a little window into some of the other things. There's a lot of dirt and stuff on the back end of the bail springs. And manually I'm trying to turn it at this point, seeing if the gears will click or not. So there is some movement in the shaft, which is a good thing. And we'll try and take that handle off. We may or may not be able to do that, but this is a starting point. You want to treat everything very gingerly on these. If you do have a frozen part and you're too aggressive with those parts, you will break it, and then you've broken the reel. So just be patient, or on the side of being gentle, and see if you can't make some things happen. We're going to try and pull this out now, and the shaft came out, so that's a good thing. So we're down to, we've got the shaft out, we've got the spool off, and we're going to try and do the side case removal. It would be this next. So again, we still have a little bit of movement in that rotor, but we don't have any gear movement. So I'm going to use a WD-40 like lubricant. I'm going to try and hit those case screws. I'm going to also hit the side here, let it sink. Everything's going to have to be re-lubed on this anyway. There's nothing going on here. I'm also going to hit the bail, because there's no sense, just a little bit of lubrication is freeing that bail right up. Well, somewhat. Oh, it's because it's locking on the catch release here, but when you got just a little bit of lubrication and that bail is tripping again, so that's good. So I'm going to guess the cause of this one is probably just dried grease. I'm going to hope for that. I have a protective glove on because obviously I have a lot of chemical lubricant sitting on that. And now again, just like we've talked before, use a hand screwdriver on these. If you have a frozen screw in there and you go to use a mechanical screwdriver and rip that head off and have the base implanted in the reel case, you're done. So just be careful. And this may or may not be the last step before I shut the video off and let something like a penetrating oil do its work. We're just going to see how far we can take this before we're up against whatever is seizing in there and whatever the solution may be. Okay, we're able to take that off. Dried grease, but other than that, nothing terrible. I'll try and pull the pin out now. There should be a pin holding the crosswind arm in here. Let's go ahead and grab a pliers for that. Right now it just looks like a lot of, let's see if it comes off this way. There we go. We have a crosswind arm, and we can see that that grease has become glue basically. We should be able to pull the shaft out now. Oh, and you can feel that there's a lot of dried grease on the shaft. Now that should free up the main gear to come out now. The main gear is out, and that's what we're just seeing right now. We're just seeing it's totally dried up, caked on, bad glue. So look at this. You need a razor knife to cut the grease off of this thing. How crazy is that? Okay, so we know why this, oh boy, wow, look at that. that's what's happened here. That is just years and years and years of drying going on with that. But the important thing to note is it can be taken off. So we're going to take that aside. Now we should have a case that, now we can turn the case. Again, this is brutally loaded with grease that's dried. So let's see if we can take the case screw off here, or the nut that holds the rotor on. And we can just see on this one, again, an example of just bad grease. We'll try this one first. We are able to take the nut off that's holding the rotor on. There's a little stop washer in there. There's the next one off the shaft. That seems to be stuck as well. I guess that's the theme here, is everything is stuck because of dried glue. I keep saying glue. Lubricant. We should be able to pull this off now. And again, just like we saw before, we've got a loaded up shaft, but it is moving. So I'm just going to see if I can't push the pinion gear shaft through. I don't know if I have the clearance there. It looks like I do. There's a ratchet that sits on top of that. It's your anti-reverse ratchet that can't clear that one particular arm. I don't know if we're going to be able to get it through. It doesn't seem like it's coming through all of that. Maybe. There you go, we did. So we're going to clean all of this stuff off. I wanted to pull that out so that we could get at the case, which has got the same problem here with all of this chunked up grease. And we'll go back and we'll clean all of this up. Then we'll come back and I'll reassemble and I'll show you if we were successful in restoring a reel that was completely frozen. So what are the lessons and the takeaways right now? The lessons on takeaway is you need to get to the core issue. You need to identify what that is. Sometimes it's a broken part. Sometimes you'll open this up and you'll see that it's a tooth of a gear or something is jammed up. Sometimes you'll see that it's fishing line or something tangled in there. Sometimes you'll see something like this where it's just very old grease that is dried, and you're just going to have to do your work to clean it all up, relube it, and get it back. But the encouraging piece is on this, that just a little bit of the WD-40 and we already got the bail snapping back. So very good idea there. All right, I am going to do the last part I can before I shut the video off. That's to grab the WD-40 light penetrating oil, and we're going to just spray down and hope that that softens up some of the gunk and the dirt on some of the main parts here. And then we'll make an attempt to go clean this stuff up, and we'll come back to the video. So stay tuned. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. We'll be back when these parts are cleaned. Okay, so I'm back. Spared you the effort of looking at me cleaning all of these parts, and it did take quite some time, but we did what we needed to do. We cleaned out all the slots in the pinion gear. We got the accumulated grease off of the moving parts, particularly the main drive here, and the shell on the outside, which is where the crosswind arm worked. And it's time to put it back together and note the improvement that was made. So we're going to start by putting back the pinion gear. And that had very limited clearance on it. So I'm going to go ahead and put some new grease on. I'm going to use a Penn Precision Reel Grease for this. And make sure that we grease the gear teeth. And we're going to make sure we put a little bit onto the gear shaft as well. And remember, I had to kind of wiggle this out, so I'm going to assume I have to kind of wiggle it in too. There we go. So that's how that's going to go. we have a bushing up top here, and then that was simply mounted. The rotor was simply mounted to the gear. Once I line it up, it's simple enough. This is a D-shaped. Here we go. I'm going to put the rotor nut back on then. And we'll give it a spin to make sure everything works properly. Some folks have asked about the tool that I'm using here. It's actually a tool for a Mitchell, but it fits anything with a 12mm nut. Now we'll give that a spin, and that's a whole lot different than what we were just experiencing before. Okay, next up then would be the main gear. We're going to make sure we do the same thing here. We're going to put some blue grease onto the shaft. I'm going to put some blue grease onto the teeth. And again, it spent quite some time taking out all the accumulated grease. It was almost like a paraffin wax. It was that thick. You can put that main gear in. Next up then would be the axle shaft. And we're going to make sure that we have the light lubrication on that shaft. The axle shaft is going to slide down, and it's going to be over the groove in the side plate there. And then the trick here is that the crosswind arm, I'm going to put a little bit of grease on the outside of this so that it slides easily. The crosswind arm with the pin is going to go through that shaft, and it's going to land in the groove that that shaft is currently sitting over. So it goes something like this, and then we just have to get it done proper, which is that. And then you'll see how the reel operates in terms of when it's spinning and cranking. Actually, it's going to spin in this direction, but that's okay. Alrighty, then we're back to the side plate. Put a little bit of grease onto the bushing. It is a bushing. And I'm just looking in my parts tray, and I just noticed that the nut that I put on had a secure lock washer under it. So that's one of the advantages of using a parts tray. If you see a part in there that can't remember where it went, you can go back to your pictures and do it, or you can just go oops and realize that you missed that. So we'll go ahead and put that lock washer back on, no big deal. Tighten it down again. Okay, then we can put the main gear back, put the shaft back. Grab our crosswind block. Make sure everything is aligned properly. Now we can put the side plate on. Align the holes. Now when I took these 3 screws out, I paid attention. I wanted to make sure that all of the screws were the same size, and they are. So there's no need to worry about what hole goes with which screw. But there are cases out there that have differing lengths of the screws, so make sure that as you take these out, you note which are which. And then off camera as well, I cleaned up the drag washers. They were in good condition. They were just like everything else on this reel. They were full of dried grease, so I give them a squirt down with the penetrating oil, and that's ready to go again. So we can go ahead and put the spool and then the tensioning knob. Now, other than a little bit of UV damage on the spool, this reel is in pretty good condition. It's obviously sat for a long time. That's what's caused the grease to dry. Just tightening it down, making sure I you have the drag tension. I like to tighten it to the point where I can't move the spool. There you go. And then back it off a little bit. And then we've just got the handle. Now you don't need to, but some folks have asked, can you? So the answer is you can put a little bit of grease on this. And that's just to kind of prevent it from sticking inside the main gear if you need to remove it again. But in this case, that one came out good the first time, so I'm not too terribly worried about that. So next up then is the side plate handle nut. Put a little shot of oil onto the handle. Make sure it spins nicely. And then we'll just give it a little bit of a test drive here, and what a difference, right? We've gone from a seized reel to one where everything is working and ready to go fishing. So that's the purpose of this video, to show you how to work on a reel that's been seized. In this case, we were fortunate in that the seize had just to do with a lot of dried grease. The time spent really wasn't in replacing any worn parts, but you saw how to take the reel apart and completely disassemble if you needed to do that. And it just shows you that patience is a key here, and don't force anything as you go to, let's see, into reverse. Like, if you go to unseize the reel, take your time and be patient, and a lot of times you will win, as we did here. So that's it. That's the Daiwa 7350 RL, and it's back and ready to go fishing again. So I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you did, please like it and subscribe, and let your friends know about the channel as well. I'm always seeking to grow my subscriber base. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Thank you for watching.